Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mina. I'm a culinary school grad and a former professional cook, and it's finally here. By far the #1 most requested recipe ever since I started this channel. I mean, I see it on the comments of every single video. I get DMs about this all the time. Make cookies, make cookies, make cookies. The reason it's been taking so long is that it's not easy. It is not easy to make a protein cookie. That's the reason why you don't see them everywhere, because it is really not easy to make one. It's always gonna come out pancake. It's not gonna have the cookie texture that we want. If you've been following me on Instagram or on YouTube, I've showed cookies all throughout the past months. I think the first cookie recipe, or the actual first cookie that I showed was in a video back in maybe October. They have been in the works for a while and I almost gave up on them. I really believe this is the closest that we're gonna get to protein cookies while preserving some of that beloved ooey gooey cookie texture that just melts in your mouth and it doesn't chew. These aren't chewy cookies. They're not pancakey cookies. That's really hard to say. Pancakey cookies. All right, that's enough talking. Let's get into the recipe. And if you want to know more about the recipe, I'm gonna have a science part in the video that's gonna go over how I came up with this recipe and how this recipe works. Welcome to the science part of the video where we're gonna talk about how I came up with this recipe and how this recipe works. You may notice that the quality of this whole video is a little bit off, and that's because my camera is broken and I'm currently filming on my phone. So make sure to watch this video, like this video, use code MINA at jackfactory.com to save yourself 20% off and to support this channel so I can afford to fix my camera. So before I could come up with this recipe, I had to start all the way at the beginning and I had to define what a cookie is. What is a cookie? What makes a cookie a cookie? So a cookie is just any dough that has a 1-to-3 ratio of sugar, fat to flour. Now you can add eggs, you can add vanilla, you can add salt, you can add chocolate chips, you can add a lot of things, but at its core, a cookie is just that: fat, sugar, flour. That's it. And that's where I started. I started with the most basic cookie that you could make, which was just regular fat, regular sugar, and regular flour. So I used butter, sugar, and flour.
It tastes exactly as you would expect. I taste a lot of the butter, and the sugar. These cookies actually remind me of those cookies that you'd see in like the blue tin, you know, like the sewing kits. Really, really simple, but it's really solid. I think that's what makes it so good, is there's nothing in here really. A cookie in its simplest, truest, cleanest of forms. A 3-ingredient cookie. A cookie at its most basic, at its most fundamental. This is the essence of a cookie.
And then I started to add ingredients. I started to take away ingredients. I started to tweak a little bit of the ingredients until I got to this recipe that we have today.
Way too dry. My protein is horrible.
So the flavor of the cookies wasn't too hard to get down. The flavor is kind of easy. That wasn't so bad. The hard part, as you might imagine, is the texture of a cookie. The texture of a cookie, as we all know, is a cookie that just crumbles away when you eat it, or it melts in your mouth, right? So let's talk about how that happens and why it's really hard to achieve that. So when you mix flour and water together, you get gluten. It's going to form together for a tight structure of dough, and it's gonna get that pancakey kind of a texture. Versus when you mix flour and fat, the fat inhibits that gluten formation and it doesn't allow that gluten to develop, which leaves you with a more crumblier texture that falls apart rather than holds together with a strong network. So in a dough, like a bread dough, we're looking to build that gluten. We want that chewiness structure, right? But in a cookie, you don't want it to be chewy. You don't want to have to bite away at a cookie. You want it to just fall apart and break apart in your mouth. And that's what fat does. And also sugar. Let's talk about all the ingredients in the recipe
and how they work. We're just gonna go through the list of ingredients. I know that some people are interested in how these ingredients work and what they actually do in the recipe. So we're just gonna go down the list of ingredients and just see why they're there and why I chose these ingredients. So this is very similar to a regular cookie recipe, and even the way that we make it is very similar to a cookie recipe, where we cream the butter and the sugar together, and then we add all the flavorings, and then we add the flour later on. So the first thing in this recipe, you got the fat and the sugar. So I opted for half peanut butter, half butter. You need butter. You're not gonna get a good cookie if you don't use butter. You're not gonna get a good cookie texture. You're gonna get similar, you're gonna get close. It's just not gonna be that great. I tried. So I opted to do half peanut butter because peanut butter has a little bit of protein at least. If you don't like peanut butter, you can use cashew butter, you can use any kind of a nut butter because they still have fat and a little bit of protein in there. And then we need sugar. You need a little bit of real sugar. Real sugar is also going to help with that break apart texture, and it's going to help the cookies spread a little bit more. And then I used monk fruit as the other fake sugar. 1 egg, that's gonna be to hold everything together and also for the taste of the cookie dough. We have the maple syrup, that's just for the consistency of the cookie or the texture of the cookie. I found that without the maple syrup, you're gonna get a drier cookie. So maple syrup helps with that. And then we have vanilla and salt, that's just for the flavoring. And then the cornstarch. Cornstarch is going to help us with the crumbly texture that we want, and you'll see it actually in a lot of regular cookie recipes. They'll use some cornstarch. You have baking soda. Baking soda is gonna help the cookies spread. You use baking powder, they're going to rise a little bit. And from my experience, something about whey and casein causes things to rise a little bit. So I wasn't looking for any rise in the cookies. I was just looking for them to spread a little bit. So that's why I use baking soda as opposed to baking powder. And real quick, if you don't know the difference between baking soda and baking powder contains baking soda and an acidic agent to make it react together. Baking soda is just baking soda. And then we have the mixture of whey, casein, and flour. So this is by far the part that took the longest for me to get down. What amount of flour to casein and how much of whey and casein. And I did a lot of experimenting on this. I tried 100% casein, I tried 100% whey, I tried a 50-50, I tried an 80-20 both ways, tried PE Science months ago. I tried a lot of things.
The protein powder suddenly doesn't taste that good. This is the ghost one. Needs work. See you next time.
I did a lot of testing with this recipe. A lot of testing, and 98% of those recipe testing were failures. It took a lot to get to where we are today, and I really, truly believe this is the closest that we're gonna get to a protein cookie that makes sense in terms of texture, macros, the taste, just overall cookiness of it. This is gonna be the closest thing that we're gonna get. Unless someone else comes up with another recipe. Who knows? If you learned anything here, make sure that you watch the video and like it so I can afford to fix my camera and give you some more content. This is also part of the reason why I haven't been able to make videos, because I don't have a camera. Gotta use the phone, it's a little bit harder. And back to the video.
This process is very similar to making regular cookies. So if you've ever made regular cookies before, you're already ahead of the curve. If you haven't, well, just stick around and follow along. You're gonna mix all your fat and your sugar, so the peanut butter, the real sugar, and the monk fruit sugar, and then you're gonna cream them together until it looks something like this. And then you also wanna scrape down the sides, as always when you're mixing anything. After that, you're going to add your egg in and then emulsify it in, so just keep beating it until it's all nice and emulsified. It looks like that. Pour in the maple syrup, the vanilla, and then you could add all your dry ingredients. I like to weigh them all in one container and then just add them in maybe in 2 batches. And if you don't have a mixer, you don't need a mixer to do this. You can do this in a bowl by hand. You can just use a whisk, and then you can switch over to a spatula, and it's absolutely doable with a whisk. I just have a mixer, and it's just a lot easier this way to beat everything together.
So after all that beating, everything's melted, so we want to put this in the fridge for at least half an hour. I put mine in there for a few hours. You can add the chocolate chips right now inside of the dough as well. I just choose not to, and you'll see why. To shape the cookies, you can either use a scooper or you can use your hand. I just like to spray my hand with a little bit of ham, so it's a lot easier to handle the dough. First, you shape it into a ball and then just squish it a little bit so it's a flat disc. And remember, these will spread out in baking. Don't make them too flat. And here's what it looks like if you use the scooper. And the reason why I didn't put the chocolate chips earlier is because I wanted to make some with chocolate chips and I wanted to make others with rainbow sprinkles. So if you wanted to just make them all with chocolate chips, you could have folded the chocolate chips inside of the dough, but this is just another option. And I actually prefer the chocolate chips to be folded into the dough, and you're gonna see why after these come out of the oven at the end of the video. You can also add other things in there, like maybe M&M's, Reese's Pieces, crushed up Oreos. Come up with your own combinations, but this was really more about the dough itself, and there's more that we can do with this dough. Then it's gonna bake for 8 to 9 minutes at 325, and please let them cool for at least 10 minutes after they come out.
So you saw what they look like. They look pretty darn close to real cookies. I already ate 1.5, so they're good. Let's try the sprinkles one. That's what it looks like on the inside. It melts in your mouth. It's not like a chewy cookie, you know? And you can definitely taste the peanut butter. Since I used chunky peanut butter, I got a little bit of nut in my mouth. If for some weird reason you don't like peanut butter, you can sub out the peanut butter for really any kind of a nut butter. So you could use sunflower butter, you could use cashew butter, you could use almond butter, because nut butters are fatty and they have some protein in there. So you could definitely use any kind of a nut butter. If you're gonna use light butter though, be careful. Light butter has water. It's not like real butter. It has a lot more water than real butter. I think it's enough cookies. I've been eating so many cookies the past few days. Macros and calories are gonna be on the screen. This has about 10 or so grams of protein per cookie, and this is not a protein bar. So please don't expect macros of a protein bar. This is a cookie, and there's a reason why cookies are associated with being fat, because they're extremely high in calories. And you can see why. If you were to sub out all these ingredients for real ingredients, it would be extremely higher in calories. So I truly believe this is the best compromise in terms of macros, taste, and texture. And texture when it comes to cookies is so important. That's the most important thing about the cookies, is the texture, that melt in your mouth texture. And that just comes from fat. You need the butter. You just need the butter. And you could really taste the butter in these cookies. It tastes like peanut butter and cookies. I will say one thing though. I will say the chocolate chips, I should have pushed the chocolate chips in more because they're just melting on top. That's my fault. And that's it for today's video. Go make your own cookies. Go put your own toppings on cookies. Make your own creations with these. And tag me on Instagram. I will repost anyone who tags me. I love seeing what you're making. I love seeing how you change the recipe. Tag me if you make any of my recipes. Don't be shy. And if you learned anything in this video, hit the thumbs up, leave a comment, just say hi, just say something. It helps me out, you know, and all that good stuff. And that's it. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.